1. This is 152. Under lockdown. Well, as I said, I had a surprise. My surprise is not that big a surprise, and it's not an ambush. I just started taking NMN because I got a deal.
Wow.
I got emailed an offer to buy it for cheap, so I'm trying it. So what's the shit supposed to do? Yeah.
I was going to warn you in advance. First of all, I can't. All right, I'll turn you up. Okay, if you take NMN, you have to take folic acid and B12. Because if you don't, it has the opposite effect. What happens is the NMN goes into your cells and helps in the production of NAD, which helps in the production of serotonin. Serotonin repairs cells from the inside.
Okay. I take multis that have B12. And is B12 niacin or is that B6? I don't fucking know. But anyway, I take a bunch of that shit anyway.
Well, you have to look into exactly the right amount because, I mean, if you don't, then it can damage your, it can damage the cells. So, what you're...
Nobody told me I'd have to read about shit.
Well, you have to use this with a certain amount of preparation. But it's not a problem. It just, you might have to double or triple your dosage of B12 and I think folic acid. I can check in the refrigerator when we're done with this show.
Okay, all right. So exciting vitamin news.
But the important thing is that the NMN will increase the repair of your cells, and these cells can be checked. In other words, it's not a pie-in-the-sky thing. You take it, you hope it works, you never really know if it's working or not. Oh no, the NAD level in your cell, which is vital for you to live. Without NAD, you just die. That level can be increased, and it can be measured. So you need to get...
You've talked about that before.
Yeah, so you need to get a company that will measure your cells for about $100.
Or I can just, like, not do that and save $100.
Well, I'm doing it the right way. I'm taking a test when I start the NMN, and then I'm going to take the same test every 6 months to see if my levels are increasing.
Okay.
Now, if those levels do increase in your cells, you will stop aging.
No, I don't believe that. I don't buy that. But okay.
You don't have to believe it. The point is that if your telomeres start lengthening, and your mitochondria becomes more efficient, and the zombie dummy cells in your body start fading away, then you will stop aging. Those are the 3 main causes of aging.
Aubrey de Grey says there are 7 causes of aging.
Okay, actually, the Harvard people that developed, this is terrible. The people that developed this system at MIT and Harvard actually said there are 6, but I only remembered 3.
Okay, all right.
Well, that score you did get me. You scored a point.
All right. And all right, now let's commence with the arguing. So we got to talk about the COVID. And I've been thinking, and, you know, this whole week has been, well, people dying and people being encouraged to rebel in various states about getting the states opened up again. And, you know, I've been thinking, and like, I don't see why you can't reopen your art school under, like, decent, you know, with everybody wearing masks and sitting apart from each other. And why can't you do that?
Thank you. You can't because they're petty tin pot dictators running California, and all these are mainly Democrat states that are doing this: New Jersey, Michigan, California, where you have these little dictators that pretend that they're in love with the poor and the oppressed minorities, and when they get in charge, they start imposing absurd restrictions. They were giving people tickets in $1,000 citations in Michigan for driving in their own car without a mask on. They were giving in Glendale and Burbank, which are parts of Los Angeles, if you leave the house without wearing a mask, you can be cited for $1,000 and or put in jail.
Okay, so you can be, but Carol and I go out, and we see, like half of everybody's wearing a mask, but half aren't. And really, who's going to bust you if you have an art class with 6 students sitting widely spaced? It's not like they're going to send cops in on a sting to catch you.
Well, what they've tried to do is they've tried to frighten people by, the first thing that happened was a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, Garcetti's the mayor of LA. He announced that he was going to shut the water and electricity down for any business that they found open. And then to scare people, they did it a couple of times, just to give people the idea. What happened in Michigan was a bunch of patriots went to the state house in Michigan and said, look, we're adults, we're not quarantining. We are free to do what we want. The Michigan governor, with thousands of people, by the way, descended on the Capitol. Her response was, well, I may just have to extend the quarantine, the lockdown now, because you guys probably spread the virus.
Well, there weren't that many fucking protesters, but yeah, they might.
No, I saw the films. There were thousands of people.
I don't know, hundreds probably.
No, I saw an aerial view. It went on for miles.
If people in cars, yeah, it doesn't take that many people in fucking cars to make a line of cars that goes on for miles. But anyway, with regard to your classes, you're in a fairly sequestered area. Nobody would ever see anything going on. And you've got a bunch of, like, independent-minded students. So, like, if you want to, I understand that it's your livelihood. And I feel like you could probably, nobody's going to bring the hammer down on you. Because,
well, here's the thing. The weird thing is, though, is that according to science, if I had a student come over here 3 weeks ago, and I dealt with the same student for 3 weeks, and he didn't get me sick, and I didn't get him sick, that would mean that we are officially have been quarantined for a 2-week period. So that would count for actually scientific proof that we're not harming anybody. Because if you got off the boat from Wuhan, China, they would quarantine you for 14 days.
Yeah.
And after 14 days, they'd say, okay, we don't see any signs.
Well, yeah, except that all the other people you came in contact with over the past 3 weeks who may have had it or not. You were talking about South Dakota as an example of a place where they should really open shit up. And in the past week, that's turned out to not be the case so much, because there's a big Smithfield meat packing plant in South Dakota where they've now had 700 cases.
Yeah, but 700 cases means virtually nothing. If you get 700 cases, what we found out from all the studies is that it's less than one. It's roughly 1 in 1,000 persons that dies from this.
No, it's 2% fucking dying from this.
No. It's 1 in 1,000, and not only that, But if
who's saying one? Hold on. Who's saying 1 in 1,000? Not 1 in 1,000 people who catch it. Maybe 1 in 1,000 in the general population, but no, 1 in 1,000 is flu. This shit is 20 times that.
No, that's not true.
According to fucking what? No, because I've got like statistic after statistic all over the motherfucking place here.
Okay, well, I've got a statistic I'm looking at right here. In the state of South Dakota, only 7 people have died.
That's true, but they've had. Let's see, South Dakota. No, hold on, where it is again. South Dakota's had 1,600 confirmed cases so far.
Yeah, I see that. So what?
So 1 in 1,000 would be 1.6 people. So.
Wait a minute. I'm beginning to understand what's going on here, Rick.
What?
I understand this now. I was hoping I wouldn't have to face this. So the Democrats hid the Stanford study from you. Is that what happened, Rick?
Hold on. So wait. Say again. You froze.
I froze. Am I still frozen?
You're back. You're back.
Okay. So what you're telling me, Rick, is that the Democrat media hid the Stanford study from you. Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know. I know what I see, and I look at worldometers.
I see the exact same thing.
Yeah, and so, for instance, they show that in the U.S., we've had 760,000 or so confirmed cases and 40,000 deaths, which is...
Yeah, actually, by the way, Johns Hopkins is about 6,000 less, by the way.
I know, well, they...
And the reason is that Worldometer counts probable deaths.
Yeah, so New York tossed in about 3,700 probables.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I mean, if you want, you can go off of 34, which is still about 5%, 34,000, which is still roughly 5%, though it's still early days. But now, if there's, I think what you're about to tell me, and I have been. I've seen this tangentially. I didn't read the study, but they did do some kind of search for antibodies in Central and Northern California, and Correct. They found out that roughly, according to this one study, I don't know if there are any others, that perhaps 4 to 5% of the population up there had antibodies indicating perhaps some contact with the coronavirus, people who maybe got the virus and then didn't get sick.
Yeah, well, listen, since you're already halfway there with me, I'll just make I'll just explain it. What the study was trying to show was obviously the reason you can't know the death rate, how deadly the thing is because it's hard to know how many people have it without symptoms. So just for our audience, if 100 people have it and 1 person dies, then it's a 1% chance you'll die from coronavirus. If 1,000 people have it and 1 person dies, then it's 1,000 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So what this study has shown is that the number of people that have the coronavirus are many times more than is being reported, which means that the chances you're going to die from it, they estimate, is below 1%.
I don't know. I mean, because there's this one study. If you look at South Korea, though, where they did a pretty fucking good job.
You're freezing?
Okay. If you look at South Korea, where they have, well, they got in there early, and they feel like they pinned the stuff down so that they think they were testing from as soon as they had 1 case. So they feel like it didn't get away from them. And so they've had about a little under 11,000 confirmed cases. and 236 deaths, which is 2%, in a place where they feel like they've got a handle on it, and which is evidenced by, they only had 13 new cases show up yesterday.
Okay. All right. So Korea says South Korea says it's 2%. The people at Stanford say it's closer to 1%. So the other thing, actually no, they say it's below 1%. So that the Stanford study is showing, what they're saying is that it's about as deadly as a normal flu.
Yeah, but that's still like, it's still all preliminary, because if you look at the confirmed cases, these are the cases where people felt sick or had come into contact with somebody with it, and they went and Carol got tested this week, and our director got tested. They both came up negative. Carol's had a cough for about 5 weeks. We didn't think it was the stuff, but just to be sure, because nothing's helping get rid of the cough, she went and got tested. She said it was, she pulled up to a bouncy house. She said it was a big plastic house.
A bouncy house?
Or it was a bouncy house minus the bouncy part, which seems unfair, because if you're going to put your life at risk testing people, you should at least get the bouncy part. But then they handed her the test. It was some kind of...
We missed that joke.
If you're going to put your life at risk testing sick people, and you're in a bouncy house, minus the bullshit that if you're going to put your life on the line, you need to...
Yeah, why are we freezing, Director? Why are we freezing?
Because everybody's stuck at home and bandwidth is all fucked up. Because everybody's...
All right. Well, I don't think we can subject our...
No, Director says we're okay what he's seeing at home.
Okay, all right.
And by the way, everybody's fucking doing this. They had a whole international special last night with the 2 late night Jimmys and Colbert and international music stars, and everybody's just doing it from home.
Yeah, well, they're crazy.
They have a Tiger King follow-up specials hosted by Joel McHale. I watched, and he was doing.
He's still in prison, right? I mean, he's not getting out.
Yeah, but Joel McHale from his couch interviewed everybody else on their couches.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, let's get back to the facts, because our audience wants to know. Yeah. What I'm saying is this. Your odds of getting it are and then am I speaking now? Okay. So basically, what the Stanford study is saying, and Rick has a South Korean study that may say different, but this has been a suspicion. I mentioned this 3 weeks ago. I mentioned this because I mentioned a Victor Davis Hansen article where he said that there was an ominous outbreak of flu in Northern California months ago. And we right now in California have a ludicrously low number of deaths. For 40 million people, we have 1,100 deaths. So what the Stanford study, given that they suspected something was funny about all that, Stanford started to do a study, and they found that this coronavirus is roughly as contagious as the flu, has the same death rate as the flu, and is basically no big deal. It is their belief that if more studies were done, it would show that many, many, many times more people actually had this, and the symptoms were so mild that they didn't even know they had it. So, Rick, how do you feel sitting there shut away like a lunatic, not being able to leave the house because your Democrat overlords have forced you to stay in with something that may turn out to be no worse than a regular flu season?
Well, because I don't know what it's one study so far versus statistics from all over the world that show, when you look at everybody's, you can go to worldometers.info and it'll show you the statistics for every country in the fucking world. And when you look at the confirmed cases versus the number of deaths in every country, it ranges from, and some countries are suspect with their reporting, like Russia has a death rate of just under 1%. Then so I don't know. I mean, because I haven't read the study. Fucking Italy has a death rate of total cases to total deaths of more than 10%. Spain 10%. Fucking so so there's a possibility that infection has been more widespread than we know, but it's one study. The study came out, I don't know, like fucking just like a week ago. So I don't know. I have to read the fucking study, and people have to weigh in on. People who know what they're talking about have to weigh in on it, because we do have all these statistics from around the world that say that when people get tested, not for antibodies, but for the actual motherfucking shit in them, I guess, the death rate is in the several percent. But
okay.
It reminds me of the chloroquine stuff, where you find an early study and then you go crazy with it, and then later studies are at best equivocal about fucking chloroquine. This is one study, and it needs to. I don't know, what it means at this point. You want to call all clear based on, I don't know how many people were tested.
30,000.
Okay. If you want to break and let me read the article, let's do that so we can talk about it better. You read it, let me read it.
Well, here's the thing. There are several different articles about it. The study itself is hard to find.
All right, but I'll read whatever articles I can read without having to pay for them. So let me do that, and we'll reconvene. So can we break?
Very good, very good. Fine.
All right, we're breaking. Director 5, here we go. We're back. So we read the articles. It's 3,300 people were tested in Santa Clarita County, and they saw the rate. They saw antibodies in people that anywhere from like 1.5 to 4% that suggested that 1.5 to 4% of the overall population may have been exposed at some point, whereas testing from the state of California, confirmed cases run about one Californian in 1,000 right now. Though the lack of testing suggests that it's probably double that. But anyway, the antibody suggests that a lot more people got it. But again, it's just one study of 3,300 people. It needs to be analyzed and done again. And even one of the scientists who did the study says, even if many more people have gotten it, it's nowhere near enough to create anything like herd immunity. To have herd immunity, where people don't get sick from it because there aren't enough people who can catch it in a population. Okay. Okay. So herd immunity is when there are enough people who are immune to it, either through vaccinations or having been exposed to it before, that those become, they block the disease from being passed on. There are people that can't pass it on because they've already had it or they've been vaccinated, and to have that out in the population, you need about 70% of the population to have immunity. And even if the Santa Clarita statistics are good, it's still only like 2.8% of the population, which isn't even 5% of what you need to disease. Though it is good news if it's, anyway, go ahead, Lance.
All right, so Rick, we're not talking about herd immunity, okay? I was aware of that you need many more times to develop herd immunity. What this study is showing is that far more people are having it without any symptoms, okay? And so given that so many people are getting it, according to this study, and showing no symptoms, and then how few people actually get bad illness or die, their point is that this has about the same rate of seriousness that flu has, maybe a little worse. So my point is, how do you feel about there were 17 researchers. Stanford's a pretty good university. I've told that Stanford's a good university. They checked antibodies, which is the first, it's considered one of the first studies of its kind that uses antibodies. For a while we couldn't do that. They finally did it. And this is what they found, that their conclusion, I read the same article you did, is that this is only a little bit worse than a regular flu. So the Democrats have locked up the whole state and made all of our lives miserable over something that I think will turn out, and I told you this a month ago, without the antibody study of Stanford. I said this is going to turn out to be a normal flu season. And even without this study, there are 33,000 deaths, and every life is precious, but it turns out that we're facing the normal deaths that we get in a flu season. So I have maintained for a month now that it was wrong to shut down the whole country and ruin everybody's lives for something that I thought was going to be about the same as a normal flu, which it is, and end up killing the same number of people that we lose every year.
All right, so a week ago, the last time we got together, there were 22,000 dead in America, confirmed dead from this stuff. Now we've got 40,500, or if you want to dispute the 6,000 that are probable rather than for sure, you got 34,000. So at the very least, we've had between 12 and 20,000 deaths, 12 and 18,000 deaths this week. And if that goes on every week for a few weeks, that's not a normal flu season. Now, we got to see, like what happened in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and Michigan, and it isn't what you expect from normal flu. Here, if you want to make the argument, if you look at the temperature map of the U.S., what this social distancing has done, in addition to preventing the COVID deaths from being higher, I think it's probably saved America from some deaths from regular flu. because if you look at the fever map of the U.S., the way this fever map works is there's a digital thermometer company that acts like Big Brother. If you use their thermometers, they're attached to the internet, and they will report your temperature to some data collection bank. And then they put out a map of where people have fevers and how many people have fevers. And then they color the country as to where they expect there to be more outbreaks of illness. With right now and for the past few weeks, Florida has been the angry red infected penis of America. The whole South is orange, and Florida is angry red. And Southern California, where we are, is like a dead neutral black, showing that our social distancing has been really effective. But if you look at their curve of how many people are getting sick in America with temperatures overall, that is unusually low because people are social distancing, which means not only are people getting less COVID than they would otherwise, people are getting less regular flu than they would otherwise, which is good. You'd argue it's like overkill, since we don't shut down the country every flu season. But my answer is generally like, there's been a lot of, we can argue about, what's up with the freedom, the liberation protesters that want their states opened up. And
hang on, let's not go on to a separate subject. I want to continue with the numbers.
The deal is that the protesters...
No, don't go on to the protesters. I want to stick with the numbers.
Okay, well, the numbers are that all this week, or most of this week, you had between 2,000 and 2,500 people dying from the COVID every day. And my expectation is that this daily number would, on average, keep increasing for the next few weeks, and maybe even into May, maybe even halfway through May. And if it doesn't, that means that social distancing is working. But it may mean some other stuff. Like Florida has been really stupid about it. If Florida doesn't have a disaster in the next few weeks, then maybe there's something to be said for the argument that more people get it without getting really sick than we thought. Because Florida's fucking done everything wrong. And if Florida dodges a bullet even after having done everything wrong with regard to social distancing, then that might be an argument that not every place is going to turn into New York City. So,
do I get to talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so sticking with the numbers, Florida, having done everything wrong, Rick predicted would be like a zombie apocalypse this week. I was wrong on one prediction. I was wrong. I didn't think the numbers would go this high, but I didn't think it would go any higher than a normal flu season, and I'm proving right on that. But Florida has roughly, it's a little bit higher than California in the rate per million. And Rick is looking at the worldometer. I'm looking at it too. And none of the southern states have any particular outbreak of coronavirus. All of them have, including the ones that did not lock down, have a similar rate to California, maybe a little bit higher. But for example, Florida is still in the hundreds. California is over 1,000, but you don't judge it by the actual numbers. You judge by percentage per million. And it looks like the states that didn't lock down have a similar rate to the states that locked down. So the lockdown was not necessary, in my opinion. But wait, there's more. It also turns out that countries didn't lock down. Notable countries would be Sweden, Taiwan. Japan was late in locking down. They've begun to this week, but
the UK, throw in the
do you have to interrupt me? Do you have to interrupt me? Do you have to interrupt me? Okay. So Sweden, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, Iceland. There are a lot of, I don't know about Iceland, but there are a lot of countries that didn't lock down and are doing okay. I mean, Sweden's got about 10 million people. They've lost about 1,100, 1,500 people. But it's nothing you would lock down a 10 million person economy for. Now, there's one other point that Rick is not facing, and I want to bring this out to you, Rick, so listen carefully. If you look at the worldometer, it shows that all the countries in the southern hemisphere and countries where it's very, very hot have extremely low levels of coronavirus. I mean, minuscule. Now, it's true that Africa probably doesn't have the best system of testing why people are dying, but in spite of that, they're not looking at massive pandemic numbers. Even with, I would say that they probably have low testing, but they probably also have low health care. I'd say that kind of balances out. Places like Australia, Africa, the hot countries of South America, Central America, North Africa, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, all the places that are really hot have practically no pandemic. And Rick will have to face that reality when he looks at the worldometer that he's judging everything by. That backs me up, Rick. And what that proves to me, Rick, is that this is all going to go away when the weather heats up in the northern hemisphere, just like the flu season always does. So just as I predicted, this is going to go away on its own. It's not a zombie apocalypse, and the Democrats have gone completely nuts over this. I have one last thing I'm going to say, because it is related to the numbers. Two last things. The first is that there was a doctor interviewed on the Dennis Prager show, who was in the trenches dealing with nothing but COVID-19. And she said, they asked her, would you eat at a restaurant now? If they ended the lockdown tomorrow, would you go out and just live normally? Go to the ball game, eat at a restaurant? She said, yeah. And they said, why? And the answer is because she says that the patients that she is getting are very old, obese, diabetic, and with respiratory conditions. So all these numbers that Rick is looking at that terrify him and force him to stay locked up in his house are of people that are probably going to die anyway. And so the numbers of healthy, vigorous people in their 40s that walk into a hospital with nothing but coronavirus and end up dying are extremely rare. You talked a long time. I'm going to say one last thing, and that is that
hold on. When you string together four things, by the time you get to number 4, I've forgotten the first 2. So you can't do that. You gotta let me respond.
Keeping notes.
I'm not keeping notes though, right now. I didn't keep notes. So let me fucking talk about these countries. There are 2 kinds of countries that didn't lock down. They're the countries who got a handle on it initially and didn't have to lock down. And then there are the irresponsible countries who didn't get a handle on it and didn't lock down, like the UK. The UK now has, they're run by Boris Johnson, who's kind of a dope. And the UK has double our death rate right now. They didn't lock down. They're going up the charts with a bullet. They're in trouble because they didn't lock down. Now Sweden, again, they decided on purpose they didn't lock down. They have between our death rate and England's death rate, which is a fairly terrible death rate. The fucking Netherlands, I don't know if they locked down. They've got a high death rate. South Korea, which didn't, they kind of, what they did was a lot of early testing. I don't know how much locking down they did. They have a death rate that is 1/25th of what ours is. So now I don't know about the warm countries, because just the way it's spread, they may have been getting it later than we did. Brazil looks like, while their numbers are low, their curve looks bad. Ecuador, let's look at their fucking curve. And yeah, their curve they're right on the equator. That's why they're called Ecuador, from equator. So they're hot. Their numbers don't look great. So I don't know. We got to wait and see. And you talked about the southern states, and as I said, we'll find out about it in the next few weeks, where maybe the heat will tamp it down, and there's stuff we can argue about who's doing a better job of reporting. It's really hard to go off of confirmed cases, because every country has different testing and different reporting procedures and different politics. Like everybody's suspicious of China's numbers. I'm suspicious of Russia's numbers. Who knows what the fuck is going on in India, which is a hot country, but would be really scary if it got out of hand there. We're just going to have to frickin' wait and see. And as I said, you can't go off the testing. The death numbers are better for going off. I mean, they're horrible, but they're better for going off of, because they're more definite than than something that depends on whether the country's doing a good job. People act more responsibly around a dead body than they do with, anyway, you know what I'm saying. There's more consistent reporting behavior around a dead body than testing of live people.
Okay, I'm concerned about the poor innocent viewer that listened to Rick's last dissertation. If you go to the coronavirus updates on the Worldometer, it's called Worldometer, you can look at the deaths in these countries. And to give you some idea what a normal flu season is in the United States, every year the United States loses about 60,000 people to flu. So we still haven't hit that in the United States. The United Kingdom, the UK, which was Rick's big example, has now got, according to the Worldometer, 16,000 deaths. So, and their rate is 237 per million. So what we're talking about here is a country with 60 million people and 16,000 deaths. So to me, Rick, I'm sorry, but if you have any logic left in you, you'll have to acknowledge that 16,000 deaths out of 60 million people does not mean a zombie apocalypse. It is a normal flu season.
Well, the UK is averaging about 750 deaths per day. And it's fucking April still. I don't know like how long the flu season's supposed to go for, but 750 deaths a day for the next 60 days is another 45,000 deaths in England, which is not a normal flu season.
Yeah,
similarly, in the U.S., another 2,000 deaths a day for 2 more months is 120,000 deaths, which is not a normal flu season. And you said that 60,000 is a pretty bad flu season. Flu seasons range from, I think, 30,000 to 60,000. So you were going off the high.
Actually, no. They in 2017, the flu may have killed 80,000 Americans. Okay, so, and we didn't shut down. I don't remember wearing a mask. I didn't get a vaccination. Not one single thing changed in my life. I didn't even know we had a flu season that was particularly bad 2 years ago.
All right,
so we lost nearly 80,000 people. Estimate was 80,000, between 60 and 80.
So I'm at the CDC website, and I'm looking at the last 10 years of flu fatalities.
Yeah.
And I'll just read them off. 37,000, 12,000, 43,000, 38,000, 51,000, 23,000, 38,000, 61,000, which was 2 years ago, which is the highest of the past 10 years, and last season, 34,000. So, yeah, okay, you are kind of getting off the high end.
The number that I heard was that it might have been as high as 80,000 in that 61,000 season. That people differ on that. It's kind of hard to know. And so far, we haven't hit 60,000. We're still in a normal flu season, Rick. So now I think
so wait until next week. By the end of April, by next week we'll be at I don't know, 52,000. By the end of April we'll be pushing 60,000. By mid-May we'll be in the 80s, and it won't be a normal fucking flu season unless some miraculous shit happens.
All right. Well, even if it's a little bit worse. Now we can start talking about people's rights. I don't think it's right to do this to people. My elected leaders are my servants, not my rulers. And unless this is literally the bubonic plague or something that is where people's bodies are stacking up in the streets or a zombie apocalypse, unless this is a legitimate pandemic, I resent being locked up in my house and treated like a child. I could, as I say, I can understand if it really is the Black Plague, but it isn't. It's a slight. It may even be a slightly worse.
A lot worse. So
no, it's not a lot.
Locked up. How many? You go out every day, right?
I resent being treated like this.
Do you go out every day?
A friend of mine was told by a cop to put his mask on while he was driving in his car.
Did he get a ticket?
If he didn't, he would have.
All right. Do you go out every day?
It's none of your goddamn business. I don't have to answer to anybody.
Okay,
do you understand?
Well, for the purpose, you say you're locked up in your house. Now,
my business has been shut down by a bunch of Democrat totalitarians, and I resent it.
But what's really stopping you from having classes again? Really, in practical terms, what's stopping you?
The government has told me that if I open my classes and they find out about it, they will shut down the water and power in this building. And they will cite me for $1,000 and possibly put me in jail.
Yeah, how much is that happening?
It's happening enough to get the message across. You think the rulers of China have to shoot everyone in China? They just make a few examples. That's the way you communists work.
Are you going to open up your classes?
You know what? I'll let the government try to figure that out. Now, I wanted to mention something else. They're arguing with you is fascinating, because when something doesn't go with your Democrat brainwashing, you can't accept a new fact, no matter how much evidence is given to you.
Which part?
You just sort of blithely mentioned that hydroxychloroquine just turned out to be bullshit. You know, you just sort of threw that in there.
No.
Since March 19th, I've been trying to tell you that hydroxychloroquine is working. And since then, it's actually become the most widely used therapy in the world. And the last person that refuses to accept its efficacy is Dr. Rosner. What the hell is the matter with you? Can't you accept any evidence at all if it goes against the Democrats?
I'm going to say what I said about it. So before we met up, I tried to get the latest information about chloroquine. And the most thorough, now you're going to say it doesn't count because it's from the LA Times, and the LA Times is part of the mainstream media, and you don't fucking trust the mainstream media. But this article lists the most studies and the results of the most studies. And this is from 2 days ago, and the headline is "Malaria Drugs Fail to Help Coronavirus Patients in Controlled Studies." And it lists several studies, and most of them, including one in France of a nice, controlled, a decent one, where like a double-blindish study of 181 French people, because you love what comes out of France. This is the biggest study I mentioned in the article, and the chloroquine is okay, but it's no great thing. It's what I said last week, and I didn't find anything this week, new shit, that made me think it was any better. I can read you researchers found.
No, I don't want to hear it, Rick. I know
why. It's the result of the study of 181.
No, wait, Rick. I accept what you've told me. The LA Times has told you that 180 French people didn't have good results. I accept that's what they told you. Reading it to me now is a waste of time. I'm trying to tell you that Didier Rault,
that guy, he does shitty studies. He's sloppy as fuck.
Rick. Didier Rault is recognized as the foremost virologist in the world.
But it doesn't mean that he's not sloppy as fuck.
No.
He proclaimed himself.